Author's Press.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Author's Press. I'm your host, Nick, and today we have a very special guest, Melton Luttrell. We'll be discussing his book, Who Drew the Two? Melton, thank you so much for coming on. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you for the ability to talk to you. Thank you.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you are, and what inspired you to write Who Drew the Two?
Okay. Of course, my name is Melton Luttrell. My middle name is Lee, so it's Melton Lee Luttrell. Everybody in Texas, no, that's an exaggeration, but bunches and bunches of people in Texas in the South have Lee as a middle name because of way back in the Civil War days when they had General Lee. So I'm one of the many, many Lees. In fact, in my family, I bet there's at least 10 people I could name that have the middle name of Lee. But Melton Lee Luttrell, but Melton is just fine. Well, I don't know what to tell you when you start talking and rambling. I'm the first place to show you about is I'm 95 years old. So I'm fortunate to have lived that long and still be in reasonably good health. I have no problems with health that I'm aware of except my feet. And I've had that problem for like 10 years where my feet are just sort of numb and I have trouble walking correctly. I sort of swivel when I walk and stagger a little bit, but I can still walk. And I use a cane when I'm outside where I don't know the territory, but I never use it inside the house. So that's me and my health. Normal weight is not overweight. I'm not underweight, so I'm proud of that. I weigh 165 pounds, and I'm 6'1" in height. So that's about me physically, and mentally, that's a whole different word.
Yeah. Well, maybe tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write Who Drew the Two, and how did you come up with the idea for the story?
I've been asked that question a lot of times, and I really don't have a good answer for it. The only thing I can tell you is that my wife and I were married for 60 some odd years before she passed away. But in the last 4 or 5 years of her life, she was really in bad shape, bedridden, and so to speak, stayed in bed most of the time. And she went to bed really early and to sleep early, and I'm an up late nighter, in other words. For my whole life, I've always gone to bed around midnight. So I had all those hours on my hand, sort of twiddled my thumbs, and I don't know why exactly, but I thought, well, wonder if I could write a book, and that would take up some time. So I really started as just a thing to take up my time. And then I had to figure out what I was going to write about. So as the old thing says, in my neighborhood, I wandered and I pondered, trying to figure out what it was I was going to write about. And then I thought, well, I'll just sort of wing it. And I'd start with some people that I really knew as people, and give them fictitious names. And then write about things that we did that I really did or they did, and sort of take it from there. And then I got to thinking, well, I got to have a plot to this thing. So how I'm going to figure out who got murdered? Well, in my little hometown, when I was a kid growing up, there was a guy that was either murdered or committed suicide, and everybody argued about it because they really didn't know. So I sort of took that as a starting point. Well, I've got a guy that's going to be murdered. Now, how do I go about murdering him, and who do I get to murder him? And I don't know, and I never really made an outline. I just sort of thought it over and started writing, and I'd write a little bit, then I'd erase a whole lot. I'd write a little more and erase a lot. So I did it all on the computer. I'd audio, and just late at night, I'd come in here and spend a couple of hours maybe, and it probably took me, I'm not really for sure, but I'd say at least 4 years that I piddled with this book before I ever completed it. Just write a little when I felt like it and erase a whole lot. And then I use a lot of things that actually happened to me and people that I actually knew. So there's a lot of that in there. And it came out with a fairly decent, good book, I guess.
Wow. I love that. It's a collection of past experiences, your own creativity, but also like, just kind of an homage to your childhood and especially the story. Like that's so interesting.
The chapter that has to do, there's several chapters in there that are actually true. I mean, just completely true all the way. It's just that I changed the names around, and so it didn't come up with somebody's name that's going to get mad at me. But there's a lot of things that just like I don't know whether you remember the chapter where the two little kids or three kids were circled with a bunch of horses and one of them got hurt because of it, had to go to the hospital. That was all true except the part that he didn't get hurt very badly, but he did get hurt. And I exaggerated that a little bit. In a few places like that in the book, I took the actual happening and maybe exaggerated a little, but it was all based on a lot of things that actually happened.
Well, can you tell me then, a little bit more about your writing process then? Like, did you outline the plot beforehand or did you just let the story develop organically?
I didn't do anything that you normally do, that people do in writing a book. I just sort of, I use the word wing it. I just started out writing and with the characters that I got and sort of made the book around those characters as I went along. And I spent a lot of time backing up. And in all honesty, I started on this thing, I said earlier, about 4 years before I completed it. I just worked a little here, a little there, back up, race, start over and that sort of thing. And until I finally began to make me a little outline as we went along, but not at the beginning, sort of a little outline at the last to sort of figure out how I was going to make it end.
You mentioned that you drew inspiration from real people and also a mixture of like fictional people. So how did you approach developing these characters in the book?
I don't really have a real good answer to that. The only thing I can tell you is that as I went along, I kept adding people and taking people out and this sort of thing over and over. So I just sort of got happy with it, but it was a work in progress. It's not like I just sat down and had the idea of an outline for the book. I did not do that. I just started out writing. Now then, once I got about half of the book more or less written, I thought, well, I need to sort of make me an outline on this. So this I went back and began to make some part of a outline in my office on the computer, just the sort of things I thought I might should do. But I'm not an author. I did years and years ago write a small book, and I was pretty happy with the way that turned out. But other than that, I'd never even thought much about writing a book until I had more time on my hands and I knew what to do with when I retired.
So this book is set in a small West Texas town, which you said was based on your childhood. So how did you ensure that the town itself became a character in the story, since you made the setting kind of just based off your own experience?
That town was an actual town except for the name. I changed the name and I went through the state of Texas maps to see where they have all the towns listed in Texas. And I went through all of those to make sure I wouldn't use a name that was really a town. So that's a fictitious name, Burson. And I took that in. But the other towns that I talk about, Breckenridge and Eastland and towns like that I wrote back in the book are really places that I was affiliated with in my lifetime.
And then the book features like a diverse cast of characters. And the ones that I want to focus on are like the owner of the local diner, the president, like the bank president's secretary, and even like the murder victim's widow. So how did you go about creating these characters and their individual storylines? And to you, what do you feel
they were true people? Every one of those people that's on the book cover, were real people with fictitious names. There were people that I really knew that were like that. The banker I knew well. Every one of them, all the way through each name in that people that's on the thing of who drew the two. Every one of those was like a person that I really knew personally.
Yeah, but what I mean is like, because these were based on real people, but how did you, like, when you created their storylines, was it all based on your experience, or did you end up filling in the gaps at some points?
Well, I think I said earlier, in my small town, there was a guy that was either committed suicide or was murdered. And it was an issue there for several years, and nobody ever come up with the answer to it, which one it was. But and so I sort of took that in the part where, the guy got shot in the movie, and sort of took that part of it, added to it, exaggerated it, and all that sort of stuff. That was sort of it, just sort of playing by, flying by, just whatever came in my mind at the time, so to speak. And I just write a little bit. It's not like an author would normally write a book by having an outline. I did not have an outline. I just started writing and I was almost, I guess, 2/3 through before I decided I'd finish it up with an outline. But I don't know what else to say about it. I enjoyed it. It took me a long time, but it gave me something to do. And I want to do a sequel to it. But because, as you know, no one in the book ever figured out who the murderer was. The people that read the last chapter know, but the characters in the book do not know through the two, so to speak. And who drew the two was just an idea of mine about how to get into that part of the book and the murder, so forth.
Well, for those listening, without giving away any spoilers, obviously this book has so many layers to it, and it's such an exciting read. But can you tell us about any unexpected twists or turns in the story that readers can look forward to without giving away any spoilers?
Well, I would say I don't remember which chapter it was right off the top of the head. I haven't read the book in a long, long time to remember exactly what went where at the time. But I remember the part about the lady in the next to the last chapter, I think. The lady sort of giving it away. In fact, I've told everybody there's 3 places in the book that if you really pay attention, you'll get the idea who the murderer was. But it's not easy to find. And even my own son, who read the book, when I first finished it, I said, well, did you figure it out? He said, no. I said, what do you mean, no? I said, well, I've got 3 clues in the middle of that book. No, you don't. I said, yes, I do. There's 3 places in that book that more or less give it away if you pay attention to who the murderer was. So I had to go back and read it. So I turned to the pages to show him or I convinced him. So, but there's those 3 places in the book that sort of give away who the actual murderer was.
Right. Well, there you go. For people listening, that's definitely a good little hint indication for this wild mystery read. I kind of wanted to ask, so the book explores themes of weddings, divorces, second weddings. So how do these events tie into the larger mystery, and what role do they play in the story?
Well, it's just things that happened to me in my life that I knew about. That whole book is based on pretty well everything that I know, that except the actual murder part. But everything else is pretty well something I was sort of involved in or thought of or what had, like the games, the part about the football game, that was just almost exactly because of my son, who was he just left here. He was an All-American high school football player. Then in college, he was an All-American in college. So he was really a good athlete. And in that book, I did speak about him very much, but what little I did was about him. And the judge was sort of a person that I knew well. A guy that was, in fact, he's one of those people that were in that thing, like the Mexican restaurant owner and all those people are the people that I knew that actually had things like that. Oh, It's a lot of it's just a true story with fictitious names and exaggerations to the incident that took place. I don't think I'd have enough smarts to just write a book outright without something like that helping me.
Wow. Well, the story also incorporated elements of like high school football, square dancing, gambling in Las Vegas, hunting trips, fishing trips. Like, how did these all seemingly unrelated activities contribute to the solving of the case?
Well, I don't know that any of them actually did, except I don't want to give it away, but there's 3 places in there that you could go back and realize that somebody shot somebody and why they did it, or the one that did it. You just got to be real careful when you read it, because there's 3 different places that more or less tell you who the murderer is. That's the key. That's the key to the book. Are you smart enough to find it?
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that.
Without reading the last chapter. Are you smart enough to find it without reading the last chapter?
Yeah, and so for listeners out there, if you're looking for a very stimulating read, something that actually challenges like everything that you think you know about the story, this is definitely the book for you. I mean, this literally felt like I was playing a game of Clue, or like one of those mystery games, and yeah, it's just such a thrilling read. So I love that you've put little hints in there to kind of indicate what it could be, as long as you're paying attention.
Makes me feel good for you to say that. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of nice compliments on it, though. I've had people that's called me on the phone, from different places in the States, and tell me they enjoyed reading it, which sort of makes me feel good about it.
Well, what lessons did you learn while writing Who Drew the Two? And like, how did they, you mentioned that, I mean, do you mind, like, how have they influenced your approach to future writing projects?
Well, I don't know. I think if I had to start all over, I would make an outline for the chapters, more or less. There, what space in the book would be the place to put certain things. But I just, like I said, I just sort of did that. I was winging it is the word I'd like to use as I went along. And believe me, I did a lot of backing up and racing. I did this all over the computer pretty well, talking, to my computer, and where it writes out what you said. Boy, I can't tell you how many times I backed up, started over in a chapter or something like that, But I'll just put it this way. I don't want to brag on it, but at the same time, I'm proud of it. I thought it turned out pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, I agree 100%. And so this is interesting, right? Because this was kind of like your first project in regards to writing, and yet like you wrote such a fulfilling project for you. Obviously, it's a great read. I mean, I would say as an author, it's pretty successful. So there's some listeners out there, who are probably thinking about starting out, or, maybe they're like novice writers. And just as an author, what advice would you give to aspiring writers who are...
I tell them if they want to do it, just sit there and sort of think out the plot, what it is you want to accomplish in the book. You want to accomplish where it makes people get mad at people or upset with people or fighting with each other, or just all the different things that happen in life. And I don't have a good answer for that. You got to realize that's my first and probably my last book. Well, years ago, I wrote a little book that had to do with, I think I said that earlier. We were building I'm real active in square dancing and still am. And we needed to build it because we were having problems finding places to dance. So I got a bunch of people together that I knew that were financially well-heeled. And I said, hey, I need to get $250,000 interest-free and no collateral, no anything you put up to guarantee it. I just need someone to give me $250,000 and I'll promise to pay it back. And would you believe me? I had a guy's wife. We were at a party outside, one of our picnic parties for our square dance club. And she came up to me and she said, Melton, I hear you want to get the money to build a building. And I said, yes. And she said, have you talked to my husband? And I said, no, I haven't. She said, well, you need to. He might help you. And I thought, oh, yes, somebody's going to give me $250,000 to look like y'all do. They just drove a little common car, dressed really in cheaper clothes, I would say. Well, come to find out, I didn't know it, but he was part of the Maybe Foundation, which had all kinds of money. And so when he finally got to me and talking to me, he said, how much money do you need? I said, well, I still didn't think I'd do it. I said, I need $250,000 to build a building. But I said, I don't have any way to guarantee it with anybody or put it up. I just need the money. He said, I'll call my accountant and talk to you in the morning. And I thought, oh, yeah, I bet you do. I bet you do. And I thought that's the last I'd ever hear of him. Right at 9 o'clock, he called me and said, okay, Melton, let's go. And I said, what do you mean, let's go? He said, you wanted $250,000, did you? And he said, I'll write you a check for $250,000. Only one thing. Whatever you pay on that thing, you keep it between me and you. Don't do a spread with anybody else.
Wow, that's amazing.
So he gave me $250,000 to build a building with.
What a connection.
But you know what? All a bunch of people together, it forms a little, I can't think of the word for it, but a little group of people, for lack of a better word. And we put up things on the wall of stock, $100 share. And do you know we paid that building off in 3 months?
That's phenomenal.
Completely paid off up 3 months.
Wow. Yeah, you definitely have had a lot of stories and experiences. And I love how, I mean, the ones that you do incorporate in the book are so, it makes me wonder, like what have you not talked about? So, look forward to maybe reading another book of yours, because you definitely have a lot of stories to tell, and, people get to hear more. But in regards to this, I think, for our listeners, we would like to hear where we can purchase, Who Drew the Two. So, Melton, if you can please tell us where we can purchase your book.
Well, I think you can get it on Amazon, I know for sure, or they can call me and I'll sell them one. I make more money that way, but I don't care. Easier on most people just to call Amazon.
So it's on Amazon. Well, I mean, for those listening, you can, obviously, Melton has a lot of really good, fascinating stories, and emotional. They all have a lot of relatability to it. And so, a good place to start would be with Who Drew the Two by Melton Luttrell. And so you can buy his book on Amazon, as well as Authors Press. And Melton, if you could just tell us a little bit about how your experience has been working with Authors Press.
Well, they've been awfully good to me, I'll put it that way. And some real nice people that I've talked to, and it'll help promote my book, and I am thankful for that. I know every person I've spoken with has been more than kind to me and professional, so it's been a good experience with me, and I really appreciate your calling me and spending with me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was honestly my pleasure. It was good to get a little bit more insight, on the person who created the book, where these stories came from, how they came to be. I mean, and for those listening, Who Drew the Two is really, really, really a stimulating read. It does take you on this crazy adventure. You won't know what hits you at the end, but Melton has put little hints in the book, so as he says, if you're smart enough, you can figure it out. But, and I love that because, it really challenges the brain, and on such a motivating read. It was great to talk to you, Melton, and know, like a little bit more of a background as to where these stories came from, who you are, and, just overall really interesting and, just really, really, really unique person and book, and I highly recommend it to anyone listening.
Well, I'm ready to thank you for calling me. I'm so pleased.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Melton, and just have a great day, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Authors Press.